Professor, you're famous for your rational expectations revolution work. And you came up with the theory that, look, you have aggressive fiscal policy and loose monetary policy, and you create something that you do not necessarily want, that is stagflation. And you said policy credibility is important, long-term is important, and people's expectations cannot just be based on short-term manipulation. Talk to us about that, please.
Oh, you got it correctly. That's something that I wish the people in my government would read and remember. Expectations is about how should you forecast the future. Well, the mathematical theory of forecasting was invented during World War II by Wiener and Kohlberg, by some people that we studied. So one thing that we learn in these tools is okay, if you're trying to do monetary and fiscal policy, government policy, tax policies, how should you do that? And then the notion of commitment and stable rules, certain rules, those are messages that just popped out of the math, okay? I had a businessman tell me in the United States, he's very upset about the uncertainty that trumps policies. He said, look, you tell me the rules. I can adapt to the rules, but if you change them, if you don't tell me, you change them every day, I just don't know it. So we have a fiscal situation in the United States. We have a social safety net. We have a public medical system. They're very expensive. If you look at all the plans and the numbers that are in the books, they do not fit together. They violate arithmetic. For example, the Social Security system is going to go bankrupt in 8 years. Okay, so that's the situation. Now, you could mathematically say what's going to happen. The United States is either going to have to default on some of its debts, we're going to have to increase some taxes, default on some promises to recipients. The politicians can pretend that they're not going to fix it when they're in office, but it's going to be fixed. I think, does the man in the street know that? Well, not in my country. In my country, STEM knowledge is not all that widespread. There was a poll. They asked, what is 1/2 divided by 1/4? And the most popular answer was, it's a trick question. You can't divide a fraction by a fraction. Well, of course you can, but that's just, the whole thing was that the median thing was Americans don't know math.
Now, based on your rational expectations revolution theory, what would be a most practical or a set of practical advice that you can give to current central bank governors and fiscal chiefs?
Look, if you look at the Central Bank of China, and they're going to say my advice better than I can say it. They're going to want basically stable rules that people can understand. They're going to want basically have policies where the government's collecting enough taxes to pay for its expenditures. They're going to have, it wants financial regulation. It's going to have, all the things that they've announced are basically within the framework that we like. And they want consistent rules over time.